I stood at the edge of the Metropolitan Art Hall, my breath fogging in the February chill of New York City. The snow fell in lazy spirals, dusting the shoulders of my charcoal gray dress, a dress I'd stitched myself, every seam a quiet rebellion against the world I was about to enter. My fingers tightened around the cracked leather clutch in my hand, its faint cedar scent, a tether to a life no one here would care to know. This wasn't just an art gala, it was a battlefield, and I was walking in unarmed, except for the truth buried in my chest. My painting, Shades of Solace, hung inside, valued at $5,800,000, 0 cents, anonymous to the glittering crowd who'd never guessed the artist was me. Emma Grayson, the nobody they'd already dismissed. The glass doors loomed ahead, reflecting a city skyline jagged with ambition. I adjusted my scarf, my boots crunching against the salted sidewalk. The invitation in my clutch, a cryptic QR code sent via encrypted email, felt like a secret I wasn't supposed to keep. My family was inside, my mother, Celeste, with her polished smile and sharper tongue, my sister Victoria, whose charm could tilt a room like a stage light. They'd mocked me before I even crossed the threshold, Celeste's voice already echoing in my head. She's just here to serve drinks. I could almost hear the laughter that would follow, the kind that cuts deeper than a blade, because it comes from the people who should have known me best. I stepped toward the entrance, but the revolving door jammed, grinding to a halt with a metallic groan. My pulse spiked. A doorman in a crisp black suit glanced over, his eyes narrowing as if I'd broken the damn thing just by existing. "Name?" he barked, not bothering to look up from his tablet. "Emma Grayson," I said, my voice steady despite the knot in my stomach. He tapped the screen, his frown deepening. My hand slid into the clutch, pulling out the printed QR code. Check again. He scanned it reluctantly, the device chirping green. His lips twitched. A half smile, half sneer. Proceed. No welcome, just a flick of his wrist like I was a stray cat he'd let in from the cold. Inside, the air hit like a wave of perfume and privilege. Crystal chandeliers cast fractured light across marble floors, each gleam a reminder of how far I was from home. The crowd moved in a choreographed dance, men in tailored tuxedos, women in gowns that cost more than my rent, their laughter loud and practiced. I caught snippets of conversation, Warhol's overrated anyway. The Basel piece sold for what, names like currency, tossed around with casual arrogance. I kept my head low, my heels tapping softly, trying to blend into the shadows. My dress, simple but deliberate, felt like armor, but it wasn't enough to shield me from the eyes that skimmed past me, already deciding I didn't belong. I spotted Celeste before she saw me. She stood near a sleek sculpture, her auburn hair swept into an elegant updo, laughing with a man in a velvet blazer. Victoria was beside her, blonde curls cascading, her sapphire gown shimmering like she'd been born to wear it. Her voice carried just loud enough to draw attention, the kind of effortless charisma that made people lean in. I looked away, my chest tightening. They hadn't just forgotten me, they'd erased me. I wasn't here for them, though. I was here for Shades of Solace, the painting I'd poured my soul into, now hanging in the main hall, nameless, stripped of my signature. The hallway stretched endlessly, lined with gilt-framed mirrors that threw back distorted versions of myself. I passed a waiter balancing a tray of champagne flutes, his glance lingering a second too long, like he was trying to place me. My clutch felt heavier, the sketch inside it, a charcoal draft of Shades of Solace, burning against my palm. It was my proof, my truth, but it felt fragile in a place like this, where money rewrote history faster than ink could dry. I turned a corner, and the lights dimmed, the air growing thick with anticipation. The main gallery was close. A sudden jolt stopped me cold. The floor vibrated, a low hum rising from below. An elevator nearby groaned, its doors stuck half open, a faint spark flickering inside. A woman in a sequined dress gasped, clutching her partner's arm. "What was that?" she whispered. My heart raced. The lights flickered, plunging the hall into a brief, suffocating darkness before snapping back on. A staffer rushed past, muttering about a technical glitch. As I pressed forward, my boots unsteady on the polished floor, the memory of that jammed revolving door clawing at my nerves. This place didn't want me here any more than my family did. The gallery opened before me, a cathedral of art and ego. Shades of Solace hung at the center, framed in silver, its stormy dawn of blues and golds glowing under a spotlight. From a distance, it looked like a sky breaking open, colors bleeding into one another like hope fighting through grief. I'd painted it in a Seattle attic, surrounded by second-hand brushes and donated canvas, every stroke a piece of the loneliness I'd carried for years. Now it stood here, priced at millions, while I stood invisible, a ghost in my own story. Whispers floated around me. They say it's a Viennese recluse, trained under Klein, maybe a woman, but the strokes are so aggressive. I bit my lip, my fingers tightening around the clutch. They didn't know, they couldn't. But then I heard her. "Victory!" Her voice sharp and deliberate, cutting through the hum. "It's striking, sure," but the artist's clearly unhinged, probably some tortured soul painting in a basement. Her entourage laughed, a soft, cruel ripple. My back stiffened, but I didn't turn. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. A hand brushed my arm, startling me. A waiter holding a tray of drinks, his smile too tight. "Champagne, miss?" he asked, but his eyes flicked to my dress, my lack of diamonds, my unpolished presence. I shook my head, catching a faint bitterness in the air. Something off about the glass he'd offered. My stomach twisted. Had Victoria slipped something into it? She'd done worse when we were kids, spiking my juice with salt just to watch me choke. I stepped back, my heel catching on the edge of a rug. The tray wobbled, and the waiter cursed under his breath, steadying it before moving on. My pulse thudded. This place was a minefield. I moved toward the painting, my steps deliberate, my eyes locked on its colors. The plaque beneath read "Artist Unknown," a lie so blatant it burned. I'd layered my grief into that canvas, nights in a women's shelter, days scraping by on coffee and stubbornness. No one here knew the cost of those brush strokes. A woman in a feathered shawl leaned close, snapping a photo. "It's divine," she murmured to her companion. "I bet the artist's in hiding, some tragic genius." I wanted to scream, "I'm right here," but my voice stayed locked in my throat. A sharp creak overhead made me flinch. The balcony above, lined with velvet ropes, swayed slightly, its railing loose under the weight of a leaning guest. My breath caught as the wood groaned, a low warning sound. The man stepped back, oblivious, laughing with his date. No one else noticed. I forced my eyes back to the painting, my heart hammering. This wasn't just a gala. It was a gauntlet, every corner hiding a threat. The lights flickered again, and I wondered if the building itself was trying to spit me out. Victoria's laugh rang out again, closer now. She stood near the painting, her sapphire dress catching the light like a blade. "It's good in a chaotic way," she said, her tone dripping with condescension. "Whoever painted it needs a therapist, not a gallery." The words landed like a slap. My fingers dug into the clutch, the sketch inside crinkling under the pressure. I could feel the room closing in, the air thick with judgment and perfume. Celeste's voice joined in, softer but no less cutting. "She's probably just here to clear the tables," she said, nodding toward me. The group around her chuckled, their eyes skimming past me like I was furniture. I turned away, my chest tight, and found myself facing a framed photo near the entrance. It was from a summer in Maine, 2016, when we'd rented a coastal cottage. I remembered that day. The salt air, the easel I'd dragged onto the porch, the paint smudged on my hands. I'd been there, smiling, part of the moment. But in the photo, I was gone, cropped out, except for the edge of my easel and a sliver of my hand, my throat closed. They hadn't forgotten me. They'd erased me. Deliberately. Like a stain they could Photoshop away. The lights dimmed, signaling the auction's start. I moved to a corner where a staffer had directed me to a wobbly chair near the kitchen door. The clatter of trays and the smell of overcooked hors d'oeuvres filled the air. A brass sign gleamed to my right. Restroom. My reflection in it was warped, a ghost in a sapphire dress Victoria had given me 2 nights ago. She'd shown up at my Airbnb, tossing the garment bag on the couch. Figured you'd need something presentable, she'd said, her smile too sharp. I'd thought it was a truce, a rare kindness. Now, seeing her in a newer, sharper version of the same dress, I realized it was bait. A used hand-me-down to mark me as less. The auctioneer's voice cut through the noise, crisp and commanding. Lot 71, Shades of Solace, opening at $2 million. Paddles rose, glinting with crests and logos. My painting, my heart, reduced to a price tag. I clutched the sketch tighter, its edges biting into my palm. This wasn't just about art. It was about who got to tell my story, and who got to steal it. The room buzzed, but my eyes drifted to the balcony again. Another guest leaned against the railing, and it creaked louder this time, a sharp crack echoing. A woman gasped, and a staffer rushed to usher the guest away. My heart pounded. This place wasn't just hostile. It was dangerous, every moment a reminder that I was out of place. But I wasn't leaving, not yet. The sketch in my clutch, the truth in my veins, anchored me. They could laugh, they could erase me, but they couldn't take what I'd built with my own hands, not without a fight. The auctioneer's gavel hovered, the bids climbing. Victoria stood near the front, smiling like she owned the night, but I was done hiding. I stood, my heels steady on the marble, and took a step forward. The room didn't notice. Not yet. But they would. The air in the Metropolitan Art Hall felt like a held breath, heavy with the weight of wealth and expectation. My charcoal gray dress clung to me, its seams a map of late nights spent sewing, dreaming, surviving. I'd made it to blend in, but standing here, surrounded by diamonds and disdain, I knew blending in was impossible. My clutch, a battered leather thing from my old mentor Clara, smelled faintly of cedar, a reminder of the Seattle attic where I'd painted Shades of Solace. That painting, now glowing under a silver frame in the main gallery, was my heart laid bare, priced at $5,800,000, 0 cents, and no one in this room knew it was mine. Not the auctioneer, not the glittering crowd, and certainly not my family. Celeste and Victoria, who'd spent years convincing the world I was nothing. Outside, the New York snow fell harder, piling against the glass doors I'd barely made it through. The revolving door had jammed as I approached, its gears grinding like a warning. I'd stood there, heart pounding, as the doorman's eyes raked over me, his tablet glowing with names that weren't mine. Emma Grayson, I'd said, my voice cutting through the cold. He'd frowned, tapped, then scanned my QR code. A cryptic invitation I'd received weeks ago, no sender listed. The green chirp felt like a grudging permission, his proceed laced with suspicion. I'd stepped inside, my boots leaving wet prints on the marble, already feeling like an intruder. The hall was a cathedral of opulence, chandeliers dripping light like liquid gold. Men in tuxedos swapped stock tips. Women in gowns that cost more than my car whispered about Basel and MoMA. I kept my head down, my heels soft against the floor, but every glance felt like a judgment. My dress was elegant, sure, but it lacked the flash of wealth, the sparkle of a last name that opened doors. Grayson meant nothing here, and had never had. I saw Celeste first, her auburn hair gleaming under the lights, laughing with a man whose watch probably cost more than my life. Victoria was at her side, her sapphire gown catching every eye, her voice a calculated melody. She always knew how to make a room hers. I turned away, my chest tight, and moved toward the gallery. I wasn't here for them. I was here for Shades of Solace, the painting I'd created in a drafty attic, surrounded by the ghosts of my past. It hung in the main hall, anonymous, rumored to be the work of some Viennese recluse. The truth was simpler and uglier. It was mine, born from nights when I had nothing but a brush and a broken heart. The hallway stretched on, mirrors throwing back versions of myself I didn't recognize. A waiter passed, his tray of champagne flutes glinting. His glance lingered, and I caught a whiff of something bitter in the glass he offered. "Champagne, miss?" His smile was too tight, his eyes too knowing. My stomach turned. Victoria had been near the bar earlier, her laugh sharp as she leaned toward a server. Had she slipped something into the drink? She'd done it before, a cruel prank when we were teens, watching me gag on tampered lemonade. I waved the glass away, my heel catching on a rug's edge. The tray tilted and the waiter cursed, steadying it before moving on. My pulse raced. This place wasn't just unwelcoming. It was a trap. The gallery opened before me, and there it was, Shades of Solace, glowing under a spotlight. Its blues and gold swirled like a storm breaking into dawn, every stroke a piece of me. I'd painted it in Seattle in a cramped attic above a used bookstore using brushes borrowed from a shelter's art program. It was grief, love, survival, layered into color. Now it stood here, priced at millions, its plaque reading "Artist un the lie" stung worse than the cold outside. Guests murmured around it. Vienna, maybe, or Berlin. The strokes are so bold, almost masculine. I bit my lip, my fingers crushing the clutch where my original sketch lay hidden. Victoria's voice cut through, sharp and deliberate. "It's chaotic, isn't it? The artist's probably a mess painting in some basement losing their mind." Her friends laughed, a soft, cruel sound. My back stiffened, but I didn't turn. I wouldn't let her see the wound. A sudden creak snapped my head up. The balcony above, lined with velvet ropes, groaned as a guest leaned against the railing. The wood splintered slightly, a low crack echoing. My breath caught. The man stepped back, laughing, oblivious to the danger. No one else noticed. My heart thudded. This place was falling apart, just like my family's lies. The lights flickered, plunging the room into a brief, suffocating darkness. A woman gasped, clutching her pearls. A staffer muttered about technical issues, but I felt the building's hostility, like it wanted me gone. I moved closer to the painting, my heels tapping against the marble. A woman in a feathered shawl snapped a photo, whispering, "It's haunting." The artist must be in hiding, some tragic genius. I wanted to scream, "I'm right here," but my voice stayed locked. Victoria's laugh rang out again, closer now. "It's good in a tortured way," she said, her tone dripping with mockery. "Whoever made this needs help, not a gallery." The words hit like a fist. My fingers dug into the clutch, the sketch inside crinkling. Celeste's voice followed, soft but venomous. "She's just here to clear the tables," she said, nodding toward me. The group chuckled, their eyes sliding past me like I was nothing. I turned, my chest burning, and caught sight of a framed photo near the entrance. Maine, 2016, a summer I'd never forget. The cottage, the sea, the easel I'd set up on the porch. I'd been there, paint on my hands, smiling despite everything, but in the photo I was gone, cropped out except for a sliver of my easel and the edge of my hand. My throat closed. They hadn't forgotten me. They'd erased me deliberately, rewriting the memory to suit their story. The lights dimmed further, the auction about to begin. A staffer directed me to a wobbly chair near the kitchen door, the clatter of trays and smell of burnt canapes filling the air. A brass restroom sign gleamed nearby, my reflection warped in its shine. I smoothed the sapphire dress Victoria had given me, its faint makeup stain a cruel reminder. She'd handed it to me 2 nights ago, smirking. "You'll need something decent," she'd said. I'd thought it was a gesture, maybe a crack in her armor. Now, seeing her in a sharper, newer version of the same dress, I knew it was a trap. A used costume to mark me as less. The auctioneer's voice boomed. "Lot 71, Shades of Solace, opening at 2 million. Paddles rose, glinting with wealth. My painting, my soul was a commodity now. I clutched the sketch, its edges sharp against my palm. The balcony creaked again, louder, as another guest leaned too close. A woman gasped, and a staffer rushed to pull them back. My heart pounded. This place wasn't just cruel, it was dangerous, but I wasn't running. Not yet. The sketch in my clutch, the truth in my bones, held me steady. They could mock me, erase me, but they couldn't steal what I'd created. Not without a fight. The bids climbed, Victoria smiling like she owned the night. But I was done being invisible. I stood, my heels firm on the marble, and took a step forward. The room didn't see me. Not yet. But they would. I stood at the edge of the Metropolitan Art Hall's main gallery, the marble cold beneath my heels, my charcoal gray dress clinging to me like a second skin. The air buzzed with the auctioneer's voice, each word a hammer driving nails into my chest. 2.5 million, he called, his Swiss accent crisp as paddles rose like vultures circling my Shades of Solace. The painting glowed under its silver frame, a storm of blues and golds I'd poured my soul into, now stripped of my name. Emma Grayson, the nobody they'd already written off. My sister Victoria stood near the front, her sapphire gown a taunting mirror of the used dress she'd tossed me, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. My mother, Celeste, sat poised, her silence louder than the bids. They thought they'd erased me, but the sketch in my clutch, charcoal lines of Shades of Solace, signed with my name, burned like a lit fuse. The room pulsed with wealth, chandeliers casting fractured light across faces that didn't see me. I'd been relegated to a wobbly chair by the kitchen door, the clatter of trays and the stench of overcooked canapes a constant reminder of my place. But I wasn't sitting anymore. I'd stepped forward, my heels echoing, the crowd's murmurs a low hum of judgment. Victoria's voice lingered in my ears, her earlier mockery slicing deeper than the cold outside. The balcony's creak, the spiked drink, the jammed elevator, they weren't accidents. This place was a gauntlet, and my family was pulling the strings. A sharp crack snapped my head up. The overhead lights flickered, plunging the gallery into a heartbeat of darkness. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A woman in pearls clutched her companion, whispering, "Not again." My pulse spiked, the memory of the sabotaged elevator flashing back. The lights returned, but the air felt heavier, electric with something more than anticipation. A staffer in a gray blazer darted past, muttering into a headset about electrical fault. I didn't buy it. This wasn't just bad wiring. It was a warning, another attempt to push me out. My fingers tightened around the clutch, the sketch inside crinkling. I wasn't leaving. I moved toward the side of the room, weaving through velvet ropes and leather chairs, each step deliberate. The auctioneer's voice climbed. 3 million! As paddles flashed, diamond-encrusted wrists glinting, my painting, my grief, reduced to a number. I caught Victoria's eye for a split second. Her smile faltered. then hardened. She leaned toward a man in a velvet jacket, whispering something that made him chuckle. My stomach twisted. She was rewriting my story in real time, and the room was eating it up. A sudden jolt shook the floor, a low rumble like a subway passing beneath. Glasses clinked on a nearby tray, and a woman gasped, her champagne splashing onto the marble. My heart thudded. The crowd murmured, heads turning toward the ceiling where a chandelier swayed slightly, its crystals tinkling like a warning bell. A staffer shouted, "Stay calm, just a tremor." But his voice cracked. New York wasn't known for earthquakes, and I didn't believe in coincidences, not tonight. My eyes flicked to Victoria, who stood unfazed, her smile a mask. Had she orchestrated this too, a distraction to keep the spotlight on her? I pressed forward, my boots steady despite the chaos. The gallery assistant, who'd dismissed me earlier, stood near the drinks table, checking badges with a bored expression. I approached, my voice low but firm. "I need to speak to someone about Shades of Solace. It's mine." He blinked, his eyes skimming my dress, my lack of a name tag. "Ownership disputes go through legal, miss, after the event." His tone was practiced, dismissive, like I was a fly buzzing too close. I leaned in, my voice sharper. "The provenance is wrong. I painted it." He shrugged, already turning away. "Take it up with the coordinator." Before I could press further, a hand grazed my shoulder, soft but startling. I turned to find an elderly man, tall and wiry, his coat frayed at the cuffs, his eyes kind behind thick glasses. "Emma," he said, his voice gravelly but warm. "You don't know me, but I knew Clara, your mentor." My breath caught. Clara's name was a lifeline, a memory of the Seattle attic where she'd taught me to paint with purpose, not permission. "Martha," he continued, clutching a folded scarf. "Her studio assistant. She talked about you, said you'd change the game." My throat tightened. Clara had died before I finished Shades of Solace, her voice the only one that ever called me an artist without a smirk. Arthur reached into his pocket, pulling out a plain USB drive. "She left this for you. Said to give it to you if I ever saw you. You looked like you were about to vanish." My fingers closed around the drive, its weight heavier than it should have been. Before I could speak, a young woman in a black blazer approached, her clipboard gleaming under the lights. "Ms., you're not cleared for this area," she said, her smile tight. "We're moving overflow to the lounge." I opened my mouth to protest, but Arthur's hand on my arm stopped me. "Go," he whispered. "Don't let them bury you." I followed the woman, Arthur trailing behind, his steps uneven. The overflow lounge was a sterile conference room near the kitchen, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the walls bare except for a TV showing the main gallery on a delayed feed. Folding chairs held a scattering of low-tier patrons, sipping watery wine from plastic cups. I sat, the USB drive burning in my clutch. Arthur took the chair beside me, sighing. "They did this to me when Clara died. No room for the nobodies at her memorial. Made space for the press instead." The TV flickered, showing Victoria now, radiant in her sapphire gown, smiling like she owned the night. The auctioneer's voice crackled through the static. 3.5 million. My painting, my troth, slipping further away. A faint hiss filled the room, and my nose stung with the acrid scent of smoke. I glanced up. A faulty heater in the corner was glowing red, tendrils of gray curling from its vents. My heart raced. "Everyone out," I shouted, standing so fast my chair tipped over. The other patrons scrambled, coughing, as Arthur grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the door. The smoke thickened, stinging my eyes, but we made it to the hallway, the air clearer but no less tense. I clutched the USB, my mind racing. Clara's voice echoed in my head. "Let your art roar." I couldn't stay in this cage of a lounge, watching my life be auctioned off. I turned to Arthur. "I'm going back." He nodded, his eyes fierce. "Show them." I slipped down the corridor, past the kitchen's clatter, past the coat check where guests dropped glass shattered like a gunshot. The main gallery loomed ahead, the lights softer now, focused on the stage. I slid into the shadows near a column, the sketch and USB heavy in my clutch. The auctioneer's voice boomed, 4 million. Paddles flashed, the crowd alive with greed. I raised my paddle, plain, paperboard, slightly bent, but a staffer in a gray blazer was on me in seconds. "Miss, that paddle's not registered," he said, his voice loud enough to draw stares. "Lower it," snickers rippled nearby. I held it higher, my arm steady. "I'm bidding on my own painting." His smile tightened. "Lower it, or we revoke your access." I lowered it slowly, my face burning not with shame but with something sharper. Defiance. The staffer turned away, but I wasn't done. "I want the provenance documentation," I said, my voice cutting through the murmurs. He blinked, caught off guard. "I don't handle that." "Then find someone who does," I snapped. He hesitated, then nodded, disappearing into the crowd. A moment later, a polished woman with a binder approached, her smile practiced. "The provenance includes the artist's narrative and authenticity certificate," she said, her tone implying I'd never see it. "I'm the artist," I said, holding her gaze. Her smile faltered, but she handed me the binder. I opened it, my hands steady despite the chaos. Glossy pages detailed a fabricated story of loss and courage, but at the bottom, below a reproduction of Shades of Solace, was a signature not mine. It was Victoria's, shaped to mimic my handwriting with a note, inspired by the guidance of Victoria Grayson. My jaw clenched. They hadn't just stolen my work, they'd stolen my pain, my survival, and handed it to her like a trophy. The bids hit $4,500,000, 0 cents. Victoria smiling at the front, waving to a man in the crowd like she was royalty. A camera flashed, catching her posed beneath my painting, her hand brushing the frame like she'd created it. My paddle slipped, clattering to the floor, the sound cut through the room, sharp as a blade. Heads turned. A woman nearby whispered, "Is she still here? God, she's desperate." Laughter sparked, but I didn't flinch. I stood, my heels clicking, and moved toward the podium. The sketch in my clutch was my weapon, my truth. He unfolded it. Charcoal lines of Shades of Solace, signed Emma Grayson, Seattle, 317. I placed it on the podium beside the auctioneer. He frowned, then nodded to a tech who projected the sketch onto the massive wall behind me. The room fell silent. No clinking glasses, no rustling silk. Just my sketch, raw and real, staring them down. "You don't know me," I said, stepping to the mic, my voice steady. "But my work's been here longer than you've let me in." I didn't look at the crowd, only at Shades of Solace, its colors alive with my past. Victoria's voice broke the hush. "She's lying," she shouted, her heels sharp as she stormed forward. "That sketch is fake. She's jealous, bitter." Gasps followed, then a tech's voice from the side. "Metadata confirms the timestamp. It matches Clara's private archive." Victoria froze, her lips trembling. "Mom, tell them," she hissed, turning to Celeste, who sat still, her eyes fixed on an untouched glass of water. The room shifted, the air heavy with recognition. Celeste rose, gliding forward with a manila envelope, her pearls gleaming. "A clarification," she said, handing it to the auctioneer. "This is the notarized deed of ownership for Shades of Solace, under Grayson Holdings. Victoria is the sole custodian." The crowd buzzed, phones lifting. "Victoria funded the framing, shipping, everything," Celeste continued, her voice cold. "Art without backing is just a hobby, Emma." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. I didn't blink. I reached into my clutch, pulling out Clara's letter and the USB. "This," I said, handing the letter to the auctioneer, "is from Clara, my mentor, dated before Grayson Holdings existed. It verifies Shades of Solace as mine." I held up the USB, turning to the press. This has every sketch, every note, time-stamped in my name. Make it public. Cameras clicked, the crowd leaning in. Victoria's face paled. It's slander, she spat, but her voice cracked. I stepped in front of Shades of Solace, my voice clear. I painted this when I had nothing but floorboards and borrowed brushes. Not for money, not for you, but because it was the only way I could breathe. I looked at Celeste and Victoria. You can own the canvas, but you'll never own its soul. The room was silent, heavy with truth. The auctioneer cleared his throat. Ms. Grayson, do we continue the sale? No, I said, my eyes on the sketch. I didn't come to sell my name. I came to take it back. The gavel hovered, then fell, the sound hollow. I turned, my heels steady, and walked toward the glass doors. Snow fell outside, soft and unrelenting. I stepped into the cold, the USB and sketch in my clutch, Clara's voice in my head. Don't disappear. I wouldn't, not anymore. The days that followed were a storm of headlines. Grayson family fraud exposed, artist reclaims stolen work. Victoria sponsorships vanished. Celeste stepped down from her arts board, her silence louder than any resignation. I moved to Seattle, opening a gallery with bare brick walls and free admission. No signatures, just art. A chalkboard read, "The walls don't ask who you are. They hold what you're brave enough to show." One day, a girl asked who painted the canvas I was working on. Someone who learned to speak, I said, and that was enough.